You probably didn't expect to stumble upon this video. And yet, here you are. What if I told you that none of this is a coincidence? That sometimes, the answer you're looking for appears exactly when you're ready to hear it. Without fanfare, without warning, just a simple "watch now" slipped into your destiny. Stay until the end. Because if you're watching this video today, there could be a much deeper reason than you imagine. Something that directly concerns you, something that begins now. You stumbled upon this video, perhaps by chance. That's what you tell yourself anyway. But deep down, a silent part of you wonders, why now? Why at this precise moment? You may not realize it yet, but there are times when life confronts you with something you weren't expecting. Something you needed to hear, even if you didn't know you needed it. Sometimes, on a spiritual journey, you're stopped without understanding. A thought, a feeling, a tiny click that resonates with you. We often think that signs have to be spectacular, bright, obvious. But the reality is that most of them are subtle. So subtle that you pass them by without even noticing. And sometimes, all it takes is a simple sentence in a video, a single word spoken at the right moment, to awaken something in your heart. Perhaps you arrived here tired, mentally exhausted, unable to understand what life has been trying to tell you for weeks, months, maybe even years. Perhaps you carry a burden you don't share with anyone. You carry questions buried beneath your smile, beneath your routine, beneath your habits. And without realizing it, you're searching. You're searching for direction. You're searching for meaning. You're searching for a light, however small, just strong enough to remind you that you're not forgotten. What stops you today, this video, this moment, this instant, may not be a coincidence. There are subtle pauses in life, as if an invisible hand were gently posing a question before you. What if you looked here? What if you listened now? You know, there is a mysterious language between the soul and its creator. A language that isn't spoken with words but with feelings, with intuitions, with coincidences that aren't really coincidences, with events that unfold with such precision that they can't be mere chance. Perhaps recently you've noticed these strange things. A thought that keeps coming back. An obstacle that persists. A project that won't get off the ground. A dream that's fading. Or conversely, an inexplicable feeling that something is approaching you, something you can't yet name. These things aren't insignificant. They are sometimes answers you haven't yet learned to recognize. Answers that slip into your days like light, patient, almost silent shadows. They never force their way into your life. They wait for your heart to calm, for your mind to stop racing, for you to finally be able to perceive what you were previously unaware of. We often believe that answers must be earth-shattering, that change must come like a storm. But most spiritual transformations begin with a breath, an imperceptible breath, a gentle, almost fragile feeling that whispers in a corner of your soul. Look, listen, you are not alone. Perhaps you never talk about it with others, because you're afraid of not being understood, because you tell yourself they're just feelings, because you think you're exaggerating, and yet your heart knows. It senses when something touches it. It senses when a message reaches it. It senses when a word arrives at the very moment it needed it. There is wisdom behind the timing of things. We don't receive answers when we demand them. We receive them when we are ready. Sometimes even when we are broken, tired, at our wits' end. This is often where the signs become visible, when certainties crumble, when the ego fades, when inner silence finally becomes a space where something can enter. If you are listening to these words, it may not be because you were looking for a video. It may be because something was looking for you. Because your soul called out, somewhere, and an answer is returning to it today in a form you never imagined. You don't need to understand everything now. You don't need to analyze everything. Sometimes it's enough to recognize that moment, that slight shiver, that little movement in your heart that tells you something is happening. Keep listening. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine you are walking in a vast desert. A desert unlike any other. It is the desert of your life, your choices, your questions, your pain, your silences. The sun is high, scorching, almost oppressive. Each step requires effort. You no longer even know how long you have been walking. You only know that going back is not an option, and neither is staying still. This desert is not a physical place. It is what you feel when you are going through a period where everything seems dry, empty, monotonous. When your prayers feel heavy. When your heart seeks a sign, any sign, just to remind you that there is still a path somewhere. When you look around you and see only an infinite expanse of difficulties, uncertainties, and doubts. You move forward again and again, sometimes out of conviction, sometimes by instinct, sometimes simply because you refuse to collapse. You keep going, even when your soul grows weary, even when your thoughts become muddled, even when faith becomes a silent inner struggle with no one truly knowing what you carry within you. And then, in this desert, there is silence. A silence that is not empty. A heavy, almost alive silence. A silence that confronts you with yourself, with your fears, your regrets, with everything you were trying to avoid. That silence, it is often within it that the greatest changes are born. But when you are in it, you don't understand it. You just think you are lost, that you are alone, that you are no longer moving forward. You keep walking. Your breath is shorter, your gaze lowers, and deep inside you, a question grows. Why is it so difficult? Many have asked this question before you, and many will ask it after, because everyone passes through this desert one day. Everyone leaves a part of themselves there. Everyone discovers a truth they would never have found anywhere else, and it is there. In the place where you least expect to receive anything, that the unpredictable happens. You look up, perhaps out of weariness, perhaps because a light breeze has touched your face, perhaps because your heart has whispered something your mind doesn't yet understand, and you see a glimmer. Nothing spectacular, nothing theatrical, just a reflection, almost she's somewhere on the horizon. You squint. Is it a mirage? You don't know, but your heart senses movement, an opening, a possibility. You take a few more steps, almost without realizing it. The reflection becomes clearer. The light dances on it as if speaking to you, as if calling to you. And suddenly, you glimpse an oasis you've never seen before. And yet, it had been there for a long time, just behind a veil of exhaustion, confusion, and worry. Your vision, blurred by fatigue, prevented you from seeing it. Your burdened heart prevented you from recognizing it. That moment when you glimpse it. That moment when your eyes open. That moment when you realize you've never walked in vain. This is exactly what some souls experience when a divine surprise approaches them. Because a surprise from your Lord is never sudden. It doesn't fall from the sky like a noise. It reveals itself gradually, the moment your heart is ready to receive it. It's not the oasis that appears all at once. It's your vision that is purified. It's your heart that is cleared. It's your soul that is realigned. And suddenly you see what has been right in front of you all this time. A way out, a direction, mercy, an opening. You realize that the period of desert was not a punishment. It was a cleansing, a stripping away. A moment when you had to let go of what prevented your inner vision from seeing clearly. Because there are things you would never have had access to until your heart had passed through the fire of emptiness. And there, in this suspended moment, you feel something shift, a calming, a shiver, a breath of tranquility. Not because everything becomes easy, but because you understand that there has always been an oasis somewhere, even when you couldn't see it. And this realization is sometimes the first sign that something great is approaching. And yet, this may not be all that this desert wanted to reveal to you. Perhaps there's a weariness in your heart that no one else knows. A weariness you carry silently, as if trying not to burden the world with what you're feeling. A heavy, deep weariness. A weariness that comes not only from the body, but from the soul. The kind of weariness that follows you even when you sleep, even when you smile, even when you pretend everything is fine. You know what it's like, don't you? That moment when you laugh with others, but your heart remains still. That moment when you pretend to be strong, but your soul trembles. That moment when you say, "I'm fine," automatically, when deep down, you're just praying to hold on a little longer. Perhaps you're going through a time when everything seems to be crumbling around you. Your plans are fading away, your relationships are changing, your certainties are disappearing. You no longer recognize your own life, and sometimes you don't even recognize yourself. It's as if you're walking through an inner fog, a fog that prevents you from seeing clearly, from understanding, from moving forward. And then there's this silence, this frightening silence, this silence that confronts you with questions you've been avoiding for a long time. This silence that makes you realize you don't control much, and that everything you thought you held firmly can slip through your fingers from one day to the next. Perhaps you felt this silence in your prayers. That moment when you speak, when you ask, when you open yourself up, and you feel like nothing answers. That moment when you ask yourself, why me? Why now? What am I supposed to understand? You feel fragile, vulnerable, lost, even. It's as if a part of you has been broken and you don't know how to mend it. And you know what? This fragility, it's not a flaw. It's not a sign of weakness. In the spiritual realm, this brokenness is sometimes an opening. Because when the soul is broken, it becomes more honest. It stops playing roles. It stops pretending. It stops wearing the mask of everything's fine. It finally speaks its truth. It lets out what was buried, what was held back, what had been suffocating for years. When a soul cracks, it's not the end. It's often the beginning. The beginning of a more sincere, purer, more aligned reconstruction. A reconstruction no longer based on ego, control, or illusions, but on the truth of your heart. Because when you are broken, you become receptive. You become attentive to things you were previously unaware of. You suddenly understand the meaning of certain trials, the value of certain losses, the depth of certain silences. You realize that what you called bad luck, blockage, or injustice was perhaps a form of protection, a reorientation, a rebalancing. You know, sometimes your Lord removes something from your path, not to punish you, but to save you. Sometimes He closes a door because behind it there was a trap you didn't see. Sometimes He creates a void to place something better within it. But when your heart is still standing firm, solid, full of pride or certainty, you cannot understand it. It is in vulnerability that eyes are opened. It is in weariness that signs become visible. It is in falling that you discover truths you refuse to face while standing. Perhaps recently you felt like everything was overwhelming you, like every effort was pointless, like every tomorrow was the same as the last. Perhaps you felt stuck, drained, suspended. and you wondered if anyone could hear your prayers, or if you were just talking to a closed heaven. But look, something happens when you reach that point of inner rupture where you no longer have the strength to pretend, that point where you let go without even realizing it, that point where you stop fighting what you don't understand, that point where you say, I have no more solutions, I have no more plans, I have no more energy. It's often there, exactly there, that the turning point is about to begin. Because when the ego falls, guidance enters. When your heart breaks, light shines through the cracks. When you feel lost, it's sometimes because you're being led down a path you would never have willingly taken. There are doors that only open when you no longer have the strength. Answers that only come when you have no more options. Changes that only begin when you stop resisting. And perhaps everything you're feeling today isn't an end, but the beginning of a transition whose scope you don't yet know, and what this transition is preparing. Perhaps your heart is only now beginning to perceive the first signs.
You might be wondering, why now? Why me? What am I supposed to understand?
This question has been swirling in your mind for a while, even if you haven't dared to ask it. Even if you're afraid of the answer, even if you tell yourself it's probably just a coincidence. But deep down, you feel it. There's something behind this moment, something you can't quite put your finger on yet. So you want an answer? Very well. But before that, let me ask you another question. What if it wasn't a coincidence? You freeze for a moment. Because this simple possibility changes everything. Because it forces your heart to open. Because it awakens a sensitivity you've long suppressed. The belief that your existence isn't an accident, that your path isn't random, and that your encounters, your losses, your successes, and your trials aren't simply isolated events. So you repeat the question differently this time. Why now? And the answer could be, because you were ready. Ready for what? Ready to see what you refused to admit. Ready to receive what you thought you didn't deserve. Ready to hear messages you long ignored because you were afraid to understand their meaning. You spent months, perhaps years, asking for a sign, but you didn't realize you weren't yet capable of recognizing it. Signs don't speak to those who only want to hear what suits them. They speak to those whose heart is ready, sincere, and open. So let me ask you another question. What if all those things that seem to be falling apart in your life were actually rearranging themselves for you? You might feel like you've lost, like you've failed, like you've been abandoned. But if you look closely, you'll notice something. It wasn't you who lost everything. It was your ego that refused to accept change. You ask, why me? Why is this happening to me? And the answer could be, because you carry something you don't yet know you possess. Because you have abilities you've never dared to acknowledge. Because your soul has a weight, a depth, a sensitivity. That means certain trials can only be entrusted to hearts capable of drawing wisdom from them. You think your difficulties weaken you, but in truth, they reveal you. Now, another question arises within you. What am I supposed to understand? And the answer isn't simple, because it's not the same for everyone. But there are universal truths that only certain souls are ready to hear. Perhaps you needed to understand that you are not alone, that you have never been alone, even on the nights when you couldn't sleep, even on the days when you couldn't breathe properly because anguish gripped your chest, even when everyone thought you were fine while you were collapsing inside. Perhaps you needed to understand that life sometimes sends you storms to prevent you from going where you would have destroyed yourself. That some losses were rescues in disguise. That some closures were protections. That some departures were necessary to free up the space that Allah wanted to fill with something else or with someone else. You ask yourself, so why do I still feel this pain, this confusion, this hesitation? Because the human heart doesn't change with the snap of a finger. It needs a shock, a rupture, a tipping point. A moment of lucidity where you realize that everything you thought you knew about yourself was incomplete. And you're there. At that moment, you're right in the thick of it. You feel that a chapter is ending. You feel that something is about to change. You feel that a truth you've long ignored is finally starting to knock on the door of your conscience. But here's the real question. Are you ready to welcome it? Because the truth never comes alone. It comes with responsibilities, with an inner calling, with a transformation that demands courage, patience, and honesty. You can no longer live as before. You can no longer lie to yourself as before. You can no longer close your eyes to what your heart deeply feels. What if all these questions swirling around in your head were a sign that you are finally waking up? What if this awakening was only the beginning of something you never dared to imagine? There are moments in life unlike anything else. Suspended moments, almost invisible, that pass before the world unnoticed, but that strike certain souls like lightning across a moonless night. These moments are rare. They don't happen amidst noise. They don't happen in a crowd. They often happen in solitude, in a moment when your heart slows, when your mind stops, even if only for a fraction of a second. It's as if time contracts, as if everything becomes still, as if your entire life suddenly holds its breath. These are the moments when you feel something. You can't explain what it is. You can't put it into words. You just know that something brushes against your soul, like a light feather falling silently. It's a breath, a shiver, a gentle warmth in the chest, a calm that has no logic, no origin, no earthly reason. It doesn't come from you. It doesn't come from your mind. It comes from a space you don't control. A space your heart knows very well, but your mind too often forgets. There are moments in life when the spiritual world draws near. Moments when the invisible becomes a little more visible. Moments when the boundary between what you can touch and what you can only hope for becomes so thin that your soul crosses it effortlessly. It's as if your heart senses something before you do. It feels it. It absorbs it. It recognizes it. It even savors it sometimes. But you, meanwhile, are wondering, what's happening to me? Why am I feeling this now? You think you're imagining things. You think it's nothing. But in the world of the soul, it's never nothing. These moments are like a rare bird. A bird that crosses the sky at impossible speed and, against all logic, decides to land for a few seconds on a branch right in front of you. It doesn't stay long. It doesn't even sing. It simply is there, present, discreet, silent. But its presence is enough to stir something within you. This bird is one of those moments when your heart and your destiny align. That moment when you understand, or rather, when you feel that you are not forgotten, that you are not abandoned, that something is watching over your path, even if you don't see it. We often believe that signs come in the form of miracles, of visions, major revelations. But the truth is, many signs are like whispers, like tiny sensations, like moments when you feel seen, acknowledged, touched, as if your soul is receiving a message your mind hasn't yet translated. Perhaps you've experienced one of these moments recently. A surge of hope during a difficult night. A feeling of calm amidst the chaos. A positive intuition that seems to come out of nowhere. Or even that strange, almost unreal feeling that something in your life is silently shifting. These moments are not insignificant. They are not accidental. They are intentional. They are placed in your life like lights on a path yet to be seen. And if you feel something right now, even a slight stirring, even a subtle warmth, even an inner breath you thought you'd lost, it might be because one of those moments has just settled within you, like a flower blooming in the dead of night, like a shooting star only your heart can see, like a whisper spoken directly to your soul. It's a silent reminder, a reminder that you are not invisible, that your heart is not abandoned in the void, that your path, even when it seems dark, has always been watched, protected, accompanied. It's a moment when the invisible slips into the visible just long enough to tell you, keep going, you are not forgotten. And perhaps what you're feeling right now is just a taste, a first breath, the very beginning of an alignment that hasn't yet revealed its true form.
There are signs in life that only those who have been broken, picked up, and then silently guided can recognize. They don't look like what you imagined. They don't knock on your door with obvious clarity. They don't announce themselves with flashes of light or spectacular revelations. No. They arrive like fragments of truth, almost insignificant details, coincidences that repeat themselves until they become unsettling, gestures that had never caught your attention before, and that suddenly seem charged with a meaning you can't yet decipher. It's subtle, almost too subtle for the eye, but never too subtle for the soul. You see, there is a language that goes neither through words, nor through sounds, nor even through thoughts. A language that goes directly through inner vibration. That strange feeling that something is readjusting in your life, as if an invisible cog is starting to turn in some corner of your destiny, without you yet being able to see what it's preparing. And often, it starts with timing that surprises you. Why did this person come back at exactly that moment? Why did this opportunity present itself right after a failure? Why did that door, which you so desperately wanted, close just when you thought everything was finally about to open? You could believe in chance. You could say it's luck or bad luck. You could convince yourself that none of this makes any sense. But your heart knows very well that it's not accidental. It feels what your mind doesn't yet understand. It perceives what your eyes cannot see. It picks up on vibrations, movements, shifts, even before they become visible. Sometimes a sign doesn't feel like good news. It feels like a loss. It feels like a humiliation. It feels like a separation that tears you in two. It feels like a project that collapses, even though you poured all your energy into it. But what you perceive as a collapse is sometimes simply the shifting of a burden you weren't meant to carry any longer. The spiritual world doesn't always warn you with clear words. It communicates with you through gestures, through silences, through synchronicities, through detours, a missed appointment, a person you bump into by chance, a message you see at the exact moment you needed it, an inexplicable feeling that arises in your heart even though nothing around you has changed. These are veiled signs, hidden hints, coded answers. They only appear when you're ready to receive them, even if you're not yet aware of them. Perhaps lately you've had this strange feeling that something is slipping away from you, but at the same time, protecting you. You can't explain why some paths close, why your heart detaches itself from certain people for no apparent reason, why you feel drawn to new directions, quieter, deeper, like a discrete force pushing you to leave the old behind and approach something that has been waiting for you for a long time. This kind of inner movement never happens on a whim. It's never just a phase. It's a calling, a veiled calling, taking the form of tiny signs. A phrase you hear and can't forget. A door that closes with almost supernatural precision. An intuition that returns again and again like a persistent reminder. A subtle unease as you move away from what isn't meant to be. An unexplained peace as you approach what awaits you. These are messages that use neither words nor sounds. They use your sensitivity, your feelings, your heart. And if you look closely, you might notice that these signs never seek to frighten you. They seek to guide you, to prepare you, to detach you from what has kept you in a state of waiting, confusion, or stagnation. Sometimes a sign arrives in a form you don't like. A breakup, a failure, silence, absence. But even these forms are messages, just wrapped differently. Like a gift sent to you in dark packaging, so that you learn to look inside rather than outside. And one of the most mysterious signs is when everything in your life seems still, but your heart tells you something is coming. You don't know what. You don't know when. You don't know in what form, but you feel it. You feel deep down that a shift is underway, that a spiritual surprise is being prepared in the unseen realm, that a chapter is turning, even if the pages still seem motionless. There comes a moment in life when something shifts, a moment when, without warning, without noise, without any outward sign, an inner reality opens within you, like a door you didn't even know you were looking for. This moment isn't like a spectacular miracle. It isn't like a vision. It isn't surrounded by a halo of light that everyone can see. No. It's a change that begins deep within, in a place no one has access to. Your soul. You don't know why it's happening now. Why this new breath is born precisely today, when you thought you were at a standstill. You don't know why, after so much doubt, a strange clarity begins to take shape within you. But you feel it. You feel it like you feel a season changing, not all at once, not overnight, but subtly, gradually, irresistibly. A bit like when a cold night quietly begins to give way to dawn. There is no sun yet. There is no warmth yet. But the air is changing. The silence is changing. The light is changing. And you feel it even before the world around you notices. This moment I'm talking about. It begins precisely when you realize you are no longer alone in your inner struggle, that you are no longer lost in your fog, that something higher, vaster, more loving has been with you for a long time, but that you couldn't yet perceive. It's that moment when your heart straightens for the first time in months, when a forgotten dignity is reborn in your chest, when you find yourself breathing differently, thinking differently, hope differently. You don't decide it. It just happens to you. It's coming to you. It's an inner strength that wasn't there yesterday, or perhaps it was, but buried beneath too many fears, too many wounds, too much silence. And when this strength rises again, it doesn't strike. It lifts you up. It pulls you upward. It awakens parts of you that you had let die. You begin to see that your trials weren't walls but passages, that your losses weren't punishments but reorientations, that your frustrations weren't blockages but invisible protections, that your silent prayers were never ignored, even when you thought they were crashing against the sky. All of this becomes clearer, not mentally, but spiritually. You see, there comes a moment when the soul understands before you do what it is about to receive. She senses the approach of a change your mind hasn't yet put into words. She perceives the arrival of a movement that is not of this world. She recognizes the particular gentleness of a divine surprise that is being prepared, and it is precisely this moment that you are touching. Perhaps you feel an energy you cannot explain, a sudden calm, a newfound clarity, a feeling that something is falling into place in the unseen realm. Or even a simple inner shiver, but a different kind of shiver, a shiver that doesn't come from fear, but from recognition, as if your soul were saying, "Finally, I've been waiting for this." You don't yet know what is changing, but you know that something is changing. You cannot describe what you feel, but you know it is not an ordinary feeling. You can't explain why you're drawn to a new version of yourself, but you feel that the old version no longer has a place in what's unfolding. What you're feeling isn't just hope. It isn't just optimism. It isn't a fleeting moment of motivation. It's an alignment between your weary heart, your patient soul, and the unseen direction in which you are being guided. And when an alignment begins, it's always a sign that a spiritual surprise is near. Not a material surprise, not a worldly reward, an inner surprise. A transformation that shifts your perspective, realigns your priorities, strengthens your faith, and broadens your horizons. A surprise that always arrives when you become ready to bear it. Never before, never too soon, never too late. And perhaps if you hear these words today, it's because this moment, this transition, this turning point has just begun. And sometimes all it takes is a breath, a sign, an inexplicable certainty to understand that the surprise you've been waiting for so long is already approaching. If these words resonated with you, even a little, it's a sign that your heart is already stirring. Don't let this moment slip away as if it were nothing. Take a second, breathe, and consciously choose to commit to your transformation. If you want to better understand the signs around you, if you want to move forward with more clarity, more peace, and more meaning, subscribe, turn on notifications, and most importantly, share this video with someone who might need it as much as you do. Perhaps their surprise begins here too.